You have probably tried using AI to help with your research before. You paste in a question, it gives you a confident sounding answer, and you just realize it just made half of it up. That's not a research tool, but that's a liability. But what if AI could work exclusively from the sources you provide? No hallucination, no made up citations, just deep, intelligent analysis of your documents. That's exactly what NotebookLM does. And today I'm going to show you how I use NotebookLM in order to completely transform the way I do research. Whether you are a graduate student drowning in PDF, a professional who is trying to make sense of mountains of reports, or just a curious person who wants to go deep on a topic, then this video is for you. So first, we need to understand what is NotebookLM. NotebookLM is a research and a note-taking tool which is built by Google, but it is not just another AI chatbot. The key thing that makes the difference is this: everything it tells you is grounded in the documents you upload. You create what's called a notebook. I like to think of this as a project folder. You load that notebook with your resources: PDF, Google Docs, audio, video, YouTube files, websites, you name it. And then you have an AI assistant that has read all of it and can help you think through it. It will answer your questions, write summaries, find connections between your sources, and even points you towards that exact quote that supports what it's telling you. Now here's why that matters for serious research. When you use a general AI assistant or LLMs, which are large language models such as ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, it's drawing on everything it was ever trained on, which means billions of web pages, books, and who know what. That means that its answers might be accurate, or they might be subtly wrong, or they might be confidently mixing up information from 5 different sources. With NotebookLM, AI's word is only your sources. It's not going wrong, it's not speculating beyond what you gave, and when it does answer, it also tells you which source the information came from. For researchers, academics, or really anyone who needs to be able to back up what they are saying, that's enormous. Let's actually use it, and I'll walk you through this step by step. We're gonna head over to notebooklm.google.com. We are going to create a new notebook. You want to give the notebook a name. For this particular work, I'm going to write my thesis, and this can be anything. It does not necessarily have to be your thesis. Your might be a climate policy research or literature review, or like whatever you want to call it, or case study, whatever you're working on. On this left hand side, you'll see the sources panel. On the middle, you have your chat interface where you can chat with the AI, and on the right hand side, you have your notes area. Let's add some sources first. In order to add some sources, you're going to go to add sources, and then you can add any kind of sources. Your sources can be anything. These can be a PDF, Google Docs, YouTube videos, websites, audio files, copied text, anything. I'm going to upload 3 academic papers from 3 different authors that I am going to be using for my thesis. We need to give a little bit of time to process. One, it is processed, you are going to get these 3 tick marks next to the sources. If we click on this particular source, then notice that it is also going to generate a summary. That is already very useful because it is a quick orientation to what's located in each document without reading yourself. If we come back to our chat window, NotebookLM has already generated an overview of these entire 3 sources. It has read everything and given you a synthesis to start from. At least for me, this is genuinely impressive every single time. Here's when it gets fun. You can just talk to your sources, type questions in natural language, and NotebookLM will dig through your documents that you uploaded in order to answer them. Let me show you a few different ways how to use this. Let me start with something simple, such as what are the main distortion models used? Notice 2 things first in this particular answer. First, it gives me a clear, organized answer. Second, every claim has this little citation badge that I can click, which takes me directly to the exact passage in the source that it is drawing from. I can actually read the original sentence in context. This is the feature that I think makes NotebookLM research grade. You are just never trusting the AI, but you are verifying everything. You can verify everything instantly. I really like to push it a little bit harder. So instead of asking a factual question, I like to ask a question that is validated or not validated across the sources. For example, how does the data of distortion model are validated across sources. And this is where it gets really powerful. It is not summarizing one paper, it is comparing the data validation across the entire source set. And for literature reviews, this is gold. Here's the one question that I really love. Based on those sources, what questions are still unanswered in this research? This is beautiful. If you're trying to write a research proposal and you're trying to find an original angle, or you are looking for where to focus your own inquiry, this is an absolutely fantastic prompt. It is essentially asking NotebookLM to help you find the frontier of what you're reading. You can also use NotebookLM as a smart search engine for your own documents. For example, what is the Orion bond angle? Instead of digging through the PDFs manually, it finds the answer to the question for me in seconds. And to top it off, this was a little bit of a trick question because each and every Orion has a different bond angles and distortion models, and this exactly answered whatever it was supposed to answer. So that's really good. Beyond the chat, NotebookLM also has this notes section, or the studio section, which I think is heavily underused, and it is really worth talking about it. Every time the AI gives you the answer in the chat, you can save it directly to your notes with one click. You can also write your own notes, paste in ideas, and start drafting as well. What I like to do is I like to use NotebookLM as a research scratchpad. I'll ask NotebookLM a question, save the response, and then write my own reaction and analysis underneath. It becomes this layer of documents with AI synthesis plus my thinking all in one place. You can also ask NotebookLM to help you work with your own notes, highlight something you wrote, and ask something like, can you help me expand this into a paragraph? And I'm going to ask something like merger of benzene with allene. This can be particularly useful for academic writing. You write a claim and you can immediately check whether your sources support your claim or not. I have to mention this because surprisingly, it is one of the most useful features. NotebookLM can also generate podcast-style audio discussions for your sources. Two AI hosts have conversations summarizing your material, key themes, debates, and the main takeaways. I know that sounds gimmicky, but hear me out. If you are someone who processes information better by listening, commuting, exercising, doing chores, this lets you observe the research material without sitting at your desk. It is also surprisingly good at capturing genuine nuances and tension between two sources. Unfortunately, you cannot cite an audio overview, but as a learning and an orientation tool, it's genuinely very useful. Other than audio overview, you also have slide deck options, video overview options, making a mind map, generating reports, flashcards, quiz, infographics, and data tables. I want to give you some concrete workflows that you can actually take and use it tomorrow. If you are doing a literature review, I like to call this literature review accelerator. You want to collect 10 to 20 papers on your topic, upload them all to one notebook. Start with something like, give me a thematic overview of these papers. What are the main arguments, methods, and findings? I like to drill in a little bit which papers focus on a specific subtopic, and something along the lines like what methodological approaches are common and which sources critique them. Also ask what consensus exists across these papers. Where is there a significant disagreement? Finally, what gaps or open questions do these papers point to? By the end of that conversation, you should now have a solid intellectual map of the literature. You still have to read papers, but now you know what to look for and why each each paper matters. If you are doing a deep document dive, for example, reading a thesis or reading a 200-page book or something like that, upload it to the notebook and ask to give an executive summary of the document. Once you get that, ask a follow-up question of what are the key recommendations or conclusions? Are there any contradictions or sections that seem to conflict with each other? What assumption does this document make that are not explicitly justified? That last question is pretty advanced and NotebookLM handles it remarkably well. It's like having a critical reading partner. If you are comparing perspectives such as debates, controversies, and interpretations, then upload the sources that represent different viewpoints on the same issue. Ask to summarize the core argument of each source. Where do these sources agree? Where do they most sharply disagree? And what seems to drive the disagreement, whether it is values or evidence or methodologies? If I had to mediate between these perspectives, what common ground exists? This is fantastic for any debates, perspective, interpretations, writing, analysis, or just generally understanding a contested topic. This is for my fellow students. Upload your course readings, lecture notes, and textbook chapters. What are the 10 important concepts covered in this material? Generate 5 exam-style questions based on this material. Answer those questions yourself in the chat and ask NotebookLM to evaluate your answers against the sources. What topics from these readings am I weakest on based on my questions and answers? I like to think of this as a self-directed studying with a tutor who actually knows your material. I really want to be honest with you because I really think it matters. NotebookLM is a tool and generally a very great tool, but it has real limitations that you need to understand. First, it only knows what you give. If you have gaps in your source collection itself, important papers that you have not uploaded, perspectives that you have not presented, NotebookLM won't fill those in. Garbage in, limited insight out. Second, it can still make mistakes, not hallucinate in the traditional AI sense. It won't cite a paper that does not exist in your collection, but it can misread, oversimplify, or miss nuance. Always click the citations and check the original source yourself. Third, it's not a substitute for reading. I know it is very tempting to just have it summarize everything, but deep understanding comes from engaging with the primary source directly. Use NotebookLM to accelerate and orient your reading, not to replace it. Fourth, source limits apply. As of now, there are limits on how many sources and how much text you can include per notebook. For very large projects, you may need to split across multiple notebooks. Use it wisely and it's very transformative. Use it lazily and you'll miss the point entirely. Here's what I keep coming back to with NotebookLM. For a long time, the bottleneck to research was not access to information, it was the ability to process it. There are only so many hours in a day and you can only hold so many papers in your head at once. NotebookLM does not replace your thinking, it expands your capacity to think. It lets you have conversation with more sources, make more connections, and ask better questions than you could alone. And I think that's the right framing for AI in research generally. Not will it do my work for me, but does it make me better at research? And in case of NotebookLM, genuinely yes. If you have made it this far and found this video useful, I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe. It is going to help me grow this channel. If you guys like this video, then you guys might want to check this video out on how to observe research papers like a sponge. I will see you inside there. Peace.